hello to attendees. My name is Maya, this is Jave, and we're here today for an artist talk of Jave's work. I will start with a little introduction. Jave is a Canadian poet, videographer, and motion graphics artist working in digital and computational media. Jave completed his PhD at Concordia in 2011 and began, I can't read anymore, and between 2012 and 2016 taught at the School of Creative Media at the City University of Hong Kong. He recently published Rewrites at Antiism Press in 2019. Rewrites is a year-long project of collaboration in poetry writing with artificial intelligence. It resulted in a 12-book limited edition box set in a proof of concept about the impact of augmented creative human and machine symbiosis. He's also the author of Aesthetic Animism on the ontological implications of digital poetry, which was published at MIT Press in 2016. His work addresses literature in emergent domains, artificial intelligence, immersive environments, 3D animation, VR, coding. Today, Jave is presenting a timeline of his work from pen to pixel from home, and I'm at the Antiism project space, where an accompanying installation of the work is presented for the foreseeable future, depending on the COVID regulations as they continue. Just for Zoom housekeeping stuff, this talk is going to be recorded. It'll be held in English, but I can translate the Q&As if ever you've got questions in French. Ça me dérange pas du tout de traduire la question pour que ce soit plus simple à répondre par la suite. And you can write in questions if you'd like, or use the raise hand function once we start the question period. And then we'll have the ability to unmute you so that you can ask the question live, and then Jave will be able to answer in person. I can, yeah. It's all you.
Thank you. I guess I'm saying welcome to invisible people somewhere out there in the confinement zone. I'm going to share a screen, and we're going to optimize it for video clip, and hopefully it'll work.
Oh, Jave, are you keen for questions at any point, or should we keep them all for the end?
I'd prefer maybe to keep them for the end, because I can't see anyone right now, so it gets a little, but if there's a dramatic question like, why can't I hear you? Or, you know, what am I looking at? Then interrupt.
Perfect.
And I'm going to start a record, so this is all, you know. So I assume you're looking at this sort of volume 3 Antiism Jave screen. And I wanted to start by saying thank you to volume 3 Maya, Antiism, Ryan, Harley, Yoav. And what I'm going to present today is pretty much an overview. This is the installation that's behind Maya that was installed today. And it's like a continuum. We could alternatively say that it's from book to code to books, from pen to pixel to programming. So what we're going to do is in 25 minutes kind of go over 25 years. And after that, we'll discuss for a little bit, and then I'll disappear back into the ether. So off we are going to go, and I hope you enjoy this. It begins in 1993. About 1995, I discovered an accountant's ledger in a puddle in the basement of a building on Wabash Avenue in Toronto. And for about 4 to 5 years, I filled it with these curved, topological, fluid language spaces. They were inspired by seeing plowed fields from an airplane. And then it became a ritualistic mode of approach to the world, where I could examine and explore and play. Like, I was listening to my own bio, and I was thinking that sounds sort of intense and status oriented. But a lot of what you do as a poet when you're approaching forms and material is you play with the semiotics of what it means to curve language around space, to turn it into a knot. And then along comes Macromedia Flash, and that produced another form of play. a form of play where I could superimpose interactive poems about failed relationships over other poems which were about the different ways that people have. And these are very crude animations that were at the beginning of the browser-based internet, where many of us thought this was a wonderful paradigm for exploring an expanded space, for really understanding what it would mean to grow a kind of poetry that was volatile, personal, philosophical, yet also utilizing all of the capacity inherent to those computational environments. So here, the beginning of that trajectory, from the pen of the large book to the pixels of these animations, there's still a concern with this sort of thick, entwined language. And then in this 1 year project, I was just placing these tiny animations online every week. So it became like a chapbook or an ongoing conversation that I was having with myself and the people at Year 01, Michael Alstad and Camille Turner were kind enough to host it. And this became a space where we could simply look at the infinite explorations of these morsels of immaculate flesh that were knotted together into a way of hoping that this corroded palace of writing and writhing, where dreams kind of corrode, the space where writing could really become more radically mobile. And this all formed just an immense playground, an exploration. In 2003, I was given a commission by Helen Thornton's turbulence.org site. And again, I created this overlapping space of multiple text animations, all within a browser, all within Macromedia Flash, and all concerned with the horrific emotional state of my romantic problems. In 2005, I published a set of 6 love poems called Soothe. And I'm going to describe the engineering of this piece because at this point, the programming becomes important. The subject, as always, is personal. But when the viewer touches the screen or clicks, it draws out a phrase to the position at which the viewer clicked on the screen. There's a population limit of 5 within this flock that are randomized within a sector. And at a certain point in the verses, it holds and the video shivers until it flows back down into a space where it's again kind of vibrant and rolling in another little loop. Each click of the screen also modulates a color filter that is applied dynamically over the text. And here it's kind of frozen on. I'm going to launch the weeds piece again. Boom. And you'll notice as I click, the first phrase is released and it releases a sound. Each phrase is connected to an actual audio track. And the audio tracks, as they fly from right to left, pan right and left. And as they move closer to the screen, they are louder. And if they move farther away, they are softer. So it's a mode of programming a lived environment for flowing poems that are not limited by the constraints of the page or the book. It's an engine somehow for growing a kind of personal love poem. And there's also a capacity inside this alien, strange space where we might think this is not happening to us. This is not literature, but it really is happening to society, that the empty neurons that are us are inundated in the untamed, ferocious light of displays. And this is a story I wrote about aliens who teleport into bodies for vacations. And so it's 121 images combined with 123 phrases that the viewer can control or have autoplay for them. It's another aspect of combinatorial literature where nothing is ever quite the same. At around 2007, I also began to experiment with After Effects, which we could consider as a software which actually tames time, which allows you to curve it. But I also used it for the continued elegy into offering apologies to those people I had hurt. Wherever you are, I hope that you are okay. And then another new software emerged, Mr. Softy, designed by Jason Lewis and Bruno Nadeau at the OBX Labs in Concordia, allowing for flexible, malleable text. You look deep into things even as they itch, burn, and bleed their way into you. Then things are inside you, looking out, open to comprehend why is. But things have lost their knowledge of things, and now is lost. And until is aware of itself, all things seem strange. So a strange oracular poem combined with video footage from a tiny handheld camera put into a sync and then messed with in Flash. The same camera put into a rivulet flowing off of Mont Royal as the snow melts. And we discover there the profound illusionary ephemeral bubbles clinging to the succulent language stalks of this wild brain of the mountain. And the same camera taken to Sao Paulo in Brazil for the File Festival, put into a stream in a cemetery to discover the flowing debris, the sediment of the dead. So this becomes a meditation and an elegy, and it's part of what I consider to be important to recognize is that these objects, which seem distant from books, are actually, this is a handheld book being used as a video screen. It is the accountant's ledger, the big book, now with video on it. And in After Effects, you can operate in the interval between being and beacon to build a sort of con. Nothing signals as strong as it seems. But ultimately, the practice of poetry and the practice of creating art is kind of a practice of being vulnerable. And this is a video I made of myself on the day in 2009 when I found out my friend Ed Fielding had died. And I was remembering the visit I had to the hospital with him. And the way the phrases kind of clung to me, the memories clung to me, could be seen through an attachment between the words and the movements of the head. And then the covering of the quantified shroud, precarious, ironic, grieving that society and civilization and this planet are going through, a clarified light of embodied form. All of this can be redeployed as new tools within the poetic field. In other more playful patterns, I built this machine which mashes together book titles I wrote, descriptions of those books, little blurbs I wrote, and then the names of the authors, the names of the critics, the names of everything is all generated. The fonts are randomized, the position of the titles of the books, the position of the author's name, the photographs, all of it is randomized and controlled by the user in an infinite system of peristaltic mutation. In another combinatorial work, multiple arrays of descriptions and terms are combined to create a MPAA disclaimer. So the following aesthetic has been approved for uncivilized audiences. The following review has been approved for illicit audiences by an alliance of revolutionary proprietary robots. And coming back to Mr. Softy, by deflecting certain logo types, you can delay the awareness of semiotics. So we know that we are the smiling face, and we discover that we are the skull. By stacking the words and then sculpturally pressing them, moving them in space, it is capable to understand, to understand the hierarchical nature of knowledge. How knowledge grows inside us, how we are pressurized to dance it, how we are moving within the system where ancestral knowledge we have to have gratitude for that kind of chain of pressure, but also an awareness of how much the flow of knowledge is within us. So this, I felt, was the choreography of language, something that the page has limits with. And by deflecting the contours of 3D letter forms, you can feel the body. You can feel something about how the body is a tube, how the body is furred, how the body is a shape, how the body fluctuates and breathes, how we are just hollow spaces. And playing with that, playing with these tools became a way for me to publish books over and over and over and over and over, while bashing my head against the technical intricacies of learning new processes. Grace is arbitrary. Fear is a river. And excitement is monotony, bringing slogans into the lived world, casting shadows, moving through space, adhering to structures. Language becomes part of the world. And as we all know now, truth is a sack full of tongues, pluralized. And the human, this shivering human creature that vibrates and wobbles and has its troubling moments where its skin fluctuates under the weight of what it knows of itself. This is the vulnerable mud of our being that can be expressed through these permutational, patterned, languaged beings. This is a metaphor that the portability of the book adds much to the new cult of individualism. Is this data plumbing? Or is it network neurology? Art is a cliche probe that scraps old environments in order to retrieve other cliches that have been tossed aside earlier. In 2011, after the tsunami and the meltdown of Fukushima, there was a sense that humanity was on the verge of extinction. Sun and wind, breath and skin. So what if we are talking about the end of all known life forms? I built an interface where the user is capable of mutating the structure of the words. So over time, you can introduce permutations into the structure of that language, and the poem itself disintegrates. But when asked to speak about the future of literature, and the future specifically of the electronic literature community, I had nothing to say in some sense, except to speak to how I know I am saying it. Because the future is not something that will ever be remembered. We are existing in a now. We are reading wind. We are overwhelmed matter muttering to itself. And here's Robert Creeley reading from a poem called Fire, which I think is appropriate for this summer. And it's an animation I did for a documentary called The Shattered Line.
Fire. Clear smoke of fire in the far-off haze of summer, burning somewhere. What is a lonely heart for, if not for itself alone? Do the questions answer themselves, all wonder brought to a reckoning? When you are done, I am done. Then it seems that one by one we can leave it all to go on.
So what are we looking at here? We're looking at an amorphous, emergent, bulbous, coagulant, beta, alpha beta. A kind of language that is unprecedented. A language that is delirious and digital, that is ephemeral, that is energized, that is fluctuating, that is fluid, that is grotesque and gorgeous and hungry, that is human, that is an exploration of identity. That is also a tunnel, letter forms inside our body forming an infinite mandala, an immersive place. This is Leo Son Chung. You see him standing there in front of this immersive cylinder in Hong Kong. He made this work in collaboration with me. He is extremely gifted. We were lucky to create this orbital space where boulders etched with archetypal glyphs mutated through their own evolution. Liaison also built for me a Mel script, which allowed the manipulation of this metaphoric creature using only tilde symbols, which is like a meditational animal mutating within space, flying through 3 or 4 dimensions. And at any given time, many suffer. A few orgasm, a few die. The tools present opportunities for exploring presence, for finding new ways to talk about poetry, for becoming a particulate within the philosophical system. And in 2017, I, like many other people, became obsessed by the idea of big data, artificial intelligence, neural networks. And I began to explore what it meant to code systems which could begin to write. And this leads to extremely fast, rapid, incoherent, crazy messes of language that have to be edited down, carved away, moved, placed. So at the symbiosis between human and artificial intelligence, there is a place of concave tissue at the end of the sea. There is some place where one can begin to write, and the augmented intelligent apparatus of human plus AI can write an extraordinary amount. And I was lucky to have that published by Antiism. Over 4,500 poems created in 1 year and exhibited, an installation co-designed by Ryan and Harley at Antiism, which, oh my God. So, are we still here? I hope we are.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay, are you looking at a video of the installation?
Yep, that's what's
Oh, good.
happening. Yep.
Wow, that was just a flicker away, a piece of madness. Okay, so this is the installation that was there last year. And there was a component where all of the human plus AI poetry books were gesture mapped with neural network controlled audio. That was done through Wekinator, extraordinary tool produced by Rebecca Feebrink. Here we see phrases from the poems of the entire set attached to the fingers, controlling a sine wave. Really, in these times of entropic change, it's good to think about nesting our skin, about practicing balance, even as we're besieged by an avalanche of information that is falling down upon us from the infosphere. And there are more explorations that will come. We are moving into a world where 3D stereotactic language will allow us to create sculptural languaged objects. We are absorbing a new kind of being, an evolving, meditative, fluid belonging to a continuum of cognition. I believe that these digital tools can actually be tools to enhance our awareness of what it means to belong to a fluid world where everything is interconnected, where the ephemeral and the eternal entwine, where flesh is just a coagulation of molecules temporarily put on while we grow. So hopefully this has offered for you a kind of decoder to some of the new forms of poetry that I've made, enabled by digital technology, and made it clear that they are related to the ancient practice of books. So hopefully that was somehow within 25 minutes. So I'm going to stop the sharing now. And
here, I'll come back in.
Okay.
Sweet. Thanks for that. I mean, I feel like your whole presentation was in and of itself like just a really generous poetry reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad it was semi-audible and
yeah.
mildly good.
Yep. So
good,
technically
good.
It also all worked out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And There's more than 2 people here, which is amazing.
There's a
Thank
group
you.
of us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you for just taking a moment out in this crazy screen-based world to do another Zoom.
To do another screen thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
So if there are questions, I'm open.
There was one from earlier, Jim Andrews, that I can allow to talk if Jim agrees to that, which I haven't received a typed answer to that question yet. If Jim, you want to speak live, can you type me a yes so I can unmute you? Yes. Okay. Allow. Your turn, Jim.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, Jave, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to
Good.
hear you.
You also. Wonderful presentation, and actually there was a lot of work there that I haven't seen, though. Jave and I have been in contact since about 1998 or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of stuff there that I haven't seen, which so I've got some interesting viewing ahead of me. How much of the stuff that you showed is available on your website?
All of it. Though
Great.
this is partially like a funeral presentation, because this is the year when you were creating, this is the year when they've officially closed the download capacity for Flash.
Right.
And it will no longer be updated or held or kept. And you were one of the pioneers of Macromedia Director earlier than I was. I think you were already creating there, and Director came to an earlier death in a way.
Yeah.
But from now on, Flash will be finished. It's closed system. So what you saw were video captures of portions of the interactivity. You know, it's like they're like fossilized residue. And I recently created a Vimeo playlist of just those videos because I'm pretty certain that the capacity to view those things in their original context is disappearing.
Are you going to make projectors of them?
Like projections?
EXEs.
Oh, perhaps, but it's a lot of work. I know you've done some of that work, but it's archaeological work that I'm hoping will be solved by perhaps a generation or 2 from now.
Right, some sort of emulator.
Yeah, there'll be some batch processing unit 5 to 10 years from now that'll just capture entire places. And so I'm more interested in propagating the original source files to rare book libraries who are open to the kind of hybrid work, so they can just have storage in case civilization actually does not disintegrate and collapse,
Right.
as it seems prone to. Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jave.
There you go. Have you ever come across the Dieter Roth quote saying that a book is a knot?
No.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, actually Amaranth quoted it in her book, but of course.
I forgot the quote.
Yeah, it's in there. There's a lot of quotes of book definitions in that book, of course. But yeah, no, it's like the first one that hit me as soon as you started with your drawings of the text in space becoming knots in and of themselves. So that really hit me as a perfect link to that.
I think I've been reading Artie Lang's book called Knots, which is these little tiny paradigmatic convulsions, which inevitably never kind of end. Mm-hmm. The relationship knots, in a sense, semiotic, but psychological.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I've got any more here. questions. Perfect.
Oh, I'm wondering if the
Thank
video
you.
will be available for classroom use. Yes. Why not? I can, make the recording totally visible. No problems.
Okay.
Right. Hello, hello.
I'll note down the email address for this person. RISD. Perfect.
I'm okay with this ending without lots of questions either, because I've developed an allergy to screens. I think I've said this to a few other people that my digital career as a digital poet is probably drawing to a close. I'm no longer interested in learning the new dot syntax tools or migrating across the boundaries of obsolescence that inevitably occur. So I might move back to a purely analog-based presence of books, back to book culture, or back to just being. Because John Berger, in a quote that I've often used, quotation, has said, poetry, above all, before communication, is an act of presence. And so I've become interested in what it means for us actively as a species to generate that kind of lived awareness of poetry, to become poetry rather than to try to generate sort of what might seem to be trivial, playful motifs. Or
No, I like that idea. I feel like it's or the most recent example of that is that I got to read anyhow is in Mary Oliver's poetry. I feel like a lot of her position is not making as like a form of personal expression, but more so as a mode of witnessing and of being in the present. So yeah.
The earth alive is what it is.
Here you go.
So digital media can do that a little bit, but it also holds us down in our chairs. So I think unless there are radical questions which need to be responded to, we should all run outside and breathe.
Perfect. That sounds good to me.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for everyone here. Perfect. Enjoy your afternoon.
Yay.
Take care.
Be well. Huh?